More than perhaps any other name in the industry, IWC has a brand image that is synonymous with that of the pilot watch. With an aviation history going back to the 1930s, it's really developed itself as one of the leaders in this field. And of all the different models within their collection, few have been able to rival that of the Big Piliot. And the topic of discussion in this video is specifically looking at the more wearable Big Piliot with the Big Piliot 43. And what we're going to do in this video is break down pretty much everything you need to know before looking to buy this watch. Number one, looking at its aviation history, moving into its more wearable case than pretty much has ever been, talking about its in-house manufactured caliber on the inside, and then ultimately why or why not to buy. Let's jump into it. Now, before we jump into this video, if you do love pilot watches, I would recommend checking out our article looking at some of the best pilot watches in the industry, well over a couple dozen different pilot watches from a wide variety of price ranges that you should be aware of. We'll have a link to that in the description down below. In the world of watch designs, there are very few designs that are given the word iconic that actually probably deserve that title and classification. Yet one certainly worthy of that title is going to be the Flieger, more accurately known as Beobachtunguhr, German for observer watch, and sorry to my native German speakers, we're trying our best here. Produced for the Luftwaffe pilots as early as 1940, the original B-Uhr watches were devised in two different formats. The Type A style dial that came first and leaned into the prominent Arabic hour indices with a triangle and two dots at noon, whereas the Type B, introduced in 1941, offered a more imposing minute track utilized for navigational purposes. Beyond the dial format, the watches, which were also very much flight instruments at the time, were truly gigantic at 55 millimeters in diameter and equipped with an extra long leather strap intended to wear outside of the heavy pilot's jacket. The crown was also imposingly large and intended to be easily manipulated by gloves of pilots in the air. As is often the case with military procurement, the watches were produced by 5 brands that have come to be known as the Big Five: A. Lange & Söhne, Laco, Stowe, Vempi, and of course, IWC. Despite the unquestionable negative World War II associations with the design format, what is now most commonly simply known as the Flieger has transcended its military roots, becoming a staple design format that numerous brands have attempted, but perhaps none with as much success and importance to the brand's modern position as IWC. After decades spent in the brand's archives, IWC released the first of its in-house homages to the original B-Uhr watches with the Big Piliot in 2002, with a gigantic but still smaller than the original 46mm case, visual aesthetics that closely mirrored the original watches, and an automatic manufacturer caliber with an impressive 7-day power reserve on the inside. Despite its heft, the Big Piliot was an instant success, spawning a range of limited editions, complications, and dial variations, while really only presenting a legitimate wearing option for the largest of wrists out there, which is where this 43mm Big Piliot naturally comes into play. Looking beyond a few key differences, including the important jump in water resistance from 60 to 100 meters, it's important to remember that more than a new watch, the Big Piliot 43 is more so an extension of the Big Piliot's model family that retains the vast majority of the Type A dial format: distinctive screw-down winding crown, straightforward brushed case, and riveted leather strap, all proportionally downsized in a way that retains the charm and military-inspired legibility, but in a package that exponentially increases the potential audience for this watch in the process. For the purposes of this video, we have both the basic black and blue dial variants of the Big Piliot 43 that will set you back around $8,900, as well as the ceramic case Top Gun variant that jumps up to $10,500, but we really want to comment on this entire collection as a whole more specifically. To briefly recap what we're dealing with here from the original Big Piliot, that watch again measured over 46mm in diameter, 46.2mm to be specific, with an enormous lug-to-lug of 57mm and a thickness of 15.5mm. Even in the early 2000s, when oversized watches were very much a part of the cultural zeitgeist, the Big Piliot still towered over the vast majority of the industry with its size. It's important to note here that being oversized is an integral part of this watch's lineage. Again, pointing out that original Flieger that was 55 millimeters in diameter. Still, for many, the original Big Pilots were just simply too big, causing many fans of the brand to look towards IWC's other iconic aviation collection in their Mark series, which has its own impressive heritage associated. Now, the new Big Pilot 43 essentially splits the difference with a 43 millimeter diameter, 52.5 millimeter lug to lug, and a 13.2 millimeters in thickness. Despite the downsized case, make no mistake that this is still a big watch. The question then becomes, though, is it too big? And my quick answer is no, but it's not necessarily as straightforward as usual. Now, taking my own 6¼ inch wrist into account, I'd probably never reach for a 43 millimeter by 52.5 millimeter watch on my own accord. But even though the Mark 20 that was recently unveiled probably is going to make more sense for myself, I think when you know the backstory of this watch, it still is able to be pulled off more than perhaps initially thought. Now, I do think that this watch is probably still too large for myself and for many people with similar wrist size, but this is certainly a big step down from, in a good way, from the original 46. Further improving the wear is a vintage style riveted leather strap affixed to the watch between 21 millimeter lugs that also offers a very slick quick release system in the process. When hitting the steel tab on the reverse side of the strap, you are easily able to remove the strap and swap in another. In addition, this watch also houses regular spring bars, meaning you are not just limited to the factory options, which really is a best of both worlds solution. Given its downsizing, the dial is only about the necessities here, showcasing the contrasting outer track for telling time, large numerals, an orientation triangle at 12, that along with the loom-filled leaf-style hands help with telling time easily in both bright light and in darkness. Turning the watch over, we have a broad sapphire exhibition caseback offering an unobstructed view of the automatic caliber, the 82-100. Long the subject of criticism for its price points in contrast to its use of third-party calibers, IWC has answered with the ever-growing integration of manufacturer calibers within its collection, with the 82-100 inside the Big Pilot 43, offering a slew of modern features as well as a surprisingly attractive level of machine decoration. Utilizing IWC's Peloton bidirectional winding system, the 82-100 manages a power reserve of 60 hours on a single barrel while oscillating at a Swiss standard 28,800 vibrations per hour or 4 Hertz with a free-sprung architecture. Components that are subject to wear, including the automatic wheel, have been replaced with ceramic options. It's also a large movement at around 30 millimeters in diameter, which of course doesn't fill the case, but it doesn't seem to be too small for it either, where it becomes a distraction. The movement, as mentioned, looks the part too. Perlage is visible on the base plate. A combination of Geneva waves, linear brushing, and anglage make its way onto the bridges and skeletonized rotor. Of course, this movement isn't quite as compelling as the caliber inside the 46 millimeter Big Pilots with its extended power reserve, but it's also important to remember that that watch retails at starting prices around $13,200, a $4,000 premium compared to this version. Now, speaking anecdotally to the accuracy presented by the 3 examples, we've tested all of them at 5 different positions. Blue dial, -8 to -5 seconds a day. Black dial, -6 to -2 seconds a day. And the Top Gun version, we have -8 to -4 seconds a day. But now to answer the question, who is this watch for and what are some final considerations before you buy? Looking at some pros, cons, and also who is this watch best suited for? Now, one of the drawbacks I'd mention is just where this one is positioned. You're talking about $9,000 for a watch, and for that price, you're around $4,000 off from the original Big Pilot at 46 millimeters. That's also gonna have the added perks of the movement, extended power reserve. It's going to greatly exceed that of this one. Also, despite this one moving down to 43 millimeters, it's still going to be a larger watch. And if you're on the fence, I'd probably recommend going for the Mark series instead of looking at this watch. But then shifting over to the pros, I would say that this watch is perhaps one of the most iconic that IWC makes. When I think of the Pilot watch and I think of IWC, the Big Pilot is what comes to mind. That just dial layout that is just so simple, following the Type A style, and then also seeing that large, just onion style, oversized crown at the 3 o'clock position. It just is part of the silhouette and design style that I associate with IWC. The heritage is there, legibility is there, both in the light and the dark. Lume is quite solid. Wearability, much better, but still, again, going to be large for some. If it is too large, I'd go for the Mark series. But I think ultimately why IWC is compelling and why it's been able to carve out this lane, and I think there's so much leaning into the Pilot watch, is for good reason. It's because they represent a good intersection of heritage and value in the luxury segment if you do like this style of watch. And one thing I always look at when trying to examine a luxury product is your ability to not have a direct peer or equal in the general range. And I think IWC, when you factor in its heritage, its design language, and also seeing where it sits in terms of price range, I think if you want an IWC, you should get an IWC, because there's really no other true alternative that's going to give you the full taste for a less amount of money. If you do have your eyes set on a traditional pilot watch of this styling, the Big Piliot really is it. But all right, guys, that is my take on the Big Piliot 43 from IWC. What are your thoughts on this watch? What are your thoughts on the Big Piliot in general, the Mark series, and what watch would you go for of all of these? And what do you think about the 43 as an addition to the Big Piliot family and collection? Also, definitely check out our Pilot Watch blog if you want more things Pilot watches. Also, TeddyBaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.